So picture this, early 2026. India's higher education authority rolls out its toughest ever rules to fight discrimination on campus. But what was supposed to be a solution ended up kicking off a massive storm of its own, a controversy that went all the way to the Supreme Court.
Now you have to understand, these rules didn't just appear out of nowhere. They were born from real tragedy. It was a response to the deaths of students like Rohit Vemula and Payal Tadvi, whose suicides, linked to alleged caste discrimination, sent absolute shockwaves across the country.
So in response to that outcry, the University Grants Commission, or the UGC, they drafted a solution. But this attempt to build a safer, fairer environment for students, well, it turned into one of the most controversial education policies we've seen in a long time. So, what exactly happened? Okay, let's back up for a second. To really get this, we have to look at the problem these rules were trying to fix in the first place. What was the real catalyst here? And it's a really important question, right? Because it's not like there were no rules before this. There were guidelines in place for years, but clearly a lot of people felt they just weren't cutting it. So why the sudden, urgent push for something so much stronger? Well, the legal trigger was a petition filed in the Supreme Court by the mothers of Rohit and Payal. Their argument was heartbreakingly simple. The old guidelines from 2012 were failing to protect students. And that personal plea for justice, it forced the highest court in the land to step in and tell the UGC to go back to the drawing board.
And look, this wasn't just a feeling people had. The numbers backed it up. The UGC's own data showed this really alarming trend. The number of official complaints for caste-based discrimination more than doubled in just 4 years. So yeah, the problem wasn't just there, it was visibly getting worse.
So you've got the court order on one side and this growing crisis on the other. The UGC had to act, and they did. They introduced their formal solution, the Promotion of Equity in Higher Education Institutions Regulations 2026.
And right away, here's the absolute game changer. The new rules were legally binding. This is huge. The old 2012 framework was basically just a set of suggestions, advisory guidelines. But this 2026 version, this was the law. It made equity a legal obligation for every single university, not just a nice goal to have.
Now, a really key part of this new framework was including protections for other backward classes, or OBCs. And when you look at the numbers, you can see why this was so important. By 2023, students from SC, ST, and OBC communities had actually become the new majority in higher education, making up over 60% of all students. The rules had to catch up to that reality.
So, okay, we know they were different, but how different, really? Let's get into the specifics of what actually changed between the old way and the new way. It really boils down to 3 massive shifts. First, the rules went from being suggestions to being mandatory. You had to follow them. Second, protections were expanded to explicitly include OBC students right alongside SC and ST students. And third, and this is a big one, that vague, slow, who knows when it'll get done complaint process, gone. Replaced with a super strict, fast-tracked system with clear deadlines. You know, here's a good way to think about it. The old 2012 system was kind of like having a single desk in a back office for complaints. The new 2026 system, it demanded a whole new administrative center with committees, help desks, dedicated staff, the works. The entire machinery of the campus was being re-engineered.
So they're building this whole new machine, but how is it actually supposed to work on the ground inside every college and university?
Well, under these new rules, every single institution had to set up this whole new ecosystem. You needed an equal opportunity center to oversee policy, an equity committee to investigate complaints, student equity ambassadors to help promote a better culture, and even mobile equity squads to monitor the campus. But the most crucial part here was the speed. Once a complaint is filed, the clock starts ticking. The committee has to meet within 24 hours. They have to produce a report in 15 working days, and then the head of the institution has to take action within the next 7 working days. Boom, boom, boom. No more room for delays. Okay, so stronger rules, faster justice. Sounds like a clear improvement, right? So why then did these regulations spark such an immediate and frankly fierce controversy?
Well, the opposition had a whole list of arguments. Critics claimed the definition of a victim was one-sided, that it only applied to students from reserved categories. There was also a really deep concern that the rules removed any penalty for filing false complaints, which people feared would open the door for misuse. Others felt the regulations just trampled on a university's autonomy and didn't give general category students a voice on the new committees.
And it wasn't just procedural complaints. There were more nuanced academic critiques, too. Professor Latika Gupta from Delhi University, for example, argued that by grouping caste together with other disadvantages like poverty or disability, the regulations were making a serious conceptual error. Her point was that caste is a totally unique social structure, and if you lump it in with other issues, you risk diluting the very specific focus that's needed to address it.
The backlash had very real-world consequences. In a pretty stunning move, a city magistrate, Alankar Agniotri, actually resigned from the civil service in protest. He called the regulations a black law, saying they would poison the academic environment and actually create more social discontent, not less. I mean, that's a powerful signal of just how deep the divisions were.
So, with the debate just raging, the entire issue came full circle, landing right back in front of the very same judges who had ordered the new rules in the first place.
And then it happened. On January 29, 2026, just weeks after they came into effect, the Supreme Court hit the pause button. The implementation of the UGC's new equity regulations was officially frozen.
And the court's reasoning? It mirrored a lot of the criticisms we just heard. The judges said the regulations seemed too sweeping, were prima facie vague, and, most importantly, seemed capable of misuse. So for the time being, India's universities have gone back to the old 2012 guidelines.
And that leaves us with this huge, unresolved dilemma. An ambitious effort to enforce equity was stopped dead in its tracks by fears that it went too far, too fast. It forces all of us to ask, with this landmark policy now stuck in limbo, what is the right path forward to ensure India's campuses are truly safe and equitable for every single student?